Welcome back, basketball, boxing, sports fans. Today, we're not going to be focusing solely on boxing. We're going to be looking at Sports Illustrated's recently released top 50 most influential athletes in sports. And it's not even athletes. So let me quote it perfectly. The 50 most influential figures in sports. So that could be coaches, broadcasters, athletes, whoever. The irony is, Sports Illustrated, like ESPN, are so woke and so biased in their breakdown that me, a hardcore sports fan who's watched sports my whole life, barely even recognizes a ton of people on this list. So then it makes you question, how influential are these people if I've never even fucking heard of them, right? So we're going to be talking about that, breaking down who on this list we think truly deserves to be on the list, talking about who the fuck are some of the people on the list. Do we even know who they are? Does anybody know who they are? And how American biased is this list? Because when you're talking about the 50 most influential people in sports, this isn't American sports. It is sports, global, right? There's no specific American centric breakdown to this sort of 50 list. But of course, when you look at the list, you'll see that primarily there is a huge American bias put onto this list. Obviously, Sports Illustrated is an American magazine. So let's get to this. Stay tuned until after this quick, short commercial. Welcome back. So let me just open this so we all can see. Oh, I guess that was not good. I should upload the thing first. There we go. Now it's perfect. I can see, you can see. So this is the 50 most influential figures in sports. We're just going to go through it quickly and just discuss some of these people. Feel free to leave your comments in the comment section below. Which people do you think potentially should be on this list, and what people shouldn't be on this list that potentially are on the list? Obviously, people are going to have a different perspective. I mean, I'm Canadian. I've primarily watched American sports for the majority of my life. Obviously, now I do live in Asia, so I'm not as surrounded by American sports as I once was. But at the same time, now with social media, it doesn't matter where you live, you can follow every sport as easily as any other. I still watch NBA. I still have the NBA package. So there's no difference for me as a high school kid playing high school basketball, watching every single NBA game I could get on TV, to now having literally access to every single NBA game. So actually, I have more opportunity to watch games now than I did actually when I lived in North America. But that's neither here nor there. This is just breaking down this list. So let's take a quick peek and see some of the people on this list. So icons and leaders. So obviously the number one person on this list, and rightfully so, is LeBron James. LeBron James is a GOAT. He's part of the 500 million club, right? So obviously he's done it both on the court and through advertisements and commercials and other things outside of the sport of boxing, even movies. So you can see the far reach he's had, not just as an athlete, but literally as a guy that pushes products as well. So, it's no surprise LeBron James is on this list and so high. At number two, Tiger Woods. At one time, probably more influential than LeBron James. Obviously, he's not the player he once was, but he still is a big seller for Nike products, I think. And obviously, still the most recognized golfer in the sport of golf, Tiger Woods. Then we get Simone Biles. Obviously, Simone Biles has been in the Olympics multiple times, but outside of the Olympics, when do we ever hear about Simone Biles? Literally, the only time I hear about her is when she was complaining about mental health issues, when she pulled out of events, or when she's actually in the Olympics and she's dominant. So nobody's questioning her. Many people think she is the best gymnast in the history of the sport. But how influential does that actually mean? Because the majority of people that watch gymnastics only watch it once every 4 years, right? Let's just be completely honest. When Natalie Comaneci from wherever she was, Czechoslovakia, was dominating, the first woman to ever score a 10, right? Literally breaking historical records at that time. And Simone Biles might be doing the same. I'm not sure. The only time people watched Natalie Comaneci was during the Olympics, right? And it's no different for Simone Biles. I question really how influential is she. Obviously, she should be on this list, but highly, I'm not sure. I don't live in the States, so I'm not sure how much commercial she gets as an Olympian. We know back in the day, Olympians got quite a bit of commercials, Wheatie boxes and other things. I'm not sure what present day advertisements are like for U.S. Olympians, but you can let me know in the comment section below. Dan Hurley, obviously, he's kind of taking over for Coach K, and obviously his team has been dominating, right? Obviously comes from a great family, the Hurleys. But outside of people that watch college basketball, I would question who even knows who Danny fucking Hurley is. I'm a hardcore basketball fan, but only really this year did I really sort of start to understand the significance of Danny Hurley. And part of that was when he was offered to become coach of Kentucky, taking over for Coach Cal, who I would say is probably more influential than Danny Hurley. Not as much of a winner, but just more of a name in the sport of college basketball. Right? And this doesn't take away from Hurley, but if he was truly that great of a coach, he would probably be in the NBA. I know he was offered the Lakers job. He turned it down. So we will see what he does this year at UConn. But the only place he has to go is down, right? Inevitably, the only place his program has is to go down. And at that point, all the buzz from, winning back-to-back titles, doing something that's been done before, it's not like he's the first person to do it. People forget the coach from Florida Gators who did it as well. And then he took that and became an NBA coach and sort of jumped on it. With Hurley, we have to see what he does moving forward. As far as him being super influential right now, I would question that. I would say outside of people that actually watch basketball, does anybody even know who Danny Hurley is? Bob Bauman, I don't know who this fucking guy is. Swimming and diving in America, who cares? Like literally 99% of Americans that watch sports probably have never even heard of this guy's name. Truthfully. Don Staley, obviously a great basketball player, college, WNBA, and now obviously doing great things at South Carolina. But once again, outside of the last 2 years of female college basketball, thanks to primarily Caitlin Clark, sorry. Why am I thinking Taylor? Katie Taylor, boxing, sorry. Caitlin Clark, who was really watching college basketball, right? We know who Don Staley was, but I mean, I never was too interested in what was going on in South Carolina. I didn't really know any of the big players. I know the coach more than I knew the players, but that wasn't saying too much because it's not as if I was intrigued or interested in watching college basketball with Don Staley being the coach of South Carolina. So I question how influential truly is she? Pep Guardiola is far more influential than almost everybody that we've seen on this list outside of Tiger Woods and LeBron James. Of course, Americans are going to say, who's Pep Guardiola? Pep Guardiola is the most dominant football coach in the world, right? With Man City, a guy who's dominated the English Premier League and obviously has done great things, right? Rewritten history books. But of course, American-centric fans wouldn't really know who he is. But this is a guy who truly deserves to be on this list above multitudes of people. Swim coach, college basketball coach, 2 of them, a gymnast. Like literally, I don't think fucking the majority of the world knows who those people are. But the majority of the world does know who Pep Guardiola is because the number one sport in the world is football. And when I say football, I ain't talking NFL. Tom Brady, sure. Tom Brady obviously is a historical quarterback. Now he's becoming a Fox analyst. I've heard that he's not really doing a great job, but obviously he's transitioning from being a player to now being, a pundit or a commentator or an analyst or whatever you want to call him. Obviously, people that are big football fans are more than well aware of who Tom Brady is and whatever capacity he takes within regards to the NFL. People are going to be well aware of who he is, right? So he's definitely on this list above multitudes of people we've mentioned already as well. There's no other football player, active or historic, that probably rates a little as high as Tom Brady does currently. Then we get to Candace Parker. Hey, I love Candace Parker. Loved Candace Parker when she played college basketball. Loved her when she played in the WNBA. Was sorry to see her retire this year, especially with this being such a big year for the league. It would have been great if she was still there. And I loved her on TNT and NBA TV. It was great to have a former player with that group. And I like the fact that it wasn't all women, because to me, that's overboard and a little ridiculous, because the majority of people that watch basketball don't know who those women are. But we do know who Candace Parker was. And when you had her up there with Shaq and obviously Charles Barkley and Kenny Smith, it was a great chemistry, and it was fitting to have a female join that crew. And obviously, I like Candace Parker a lot, so I don't have any problem with her being on this list. For me, she was always the best professional WNBA player in the sport. Lionel Messi, again, American-centric people might only be aware now that he's playing in America, playing for Inter Miami. But this is the greatest footballer in the history of the sport that's had some legendary footballers, right? He's won multiple player of the years, as they say, Ball d'Or, won countless titles for Barcelona, obviously just won World Cup for Argentina last World Cup, and now obviously has transitioned over to the United States like Beckham did. And, in America now, he is a name. But he was worldwide a god before he moved to America. Literally, he was offered almost $1 billion to go play in Saudi Arabia. $1 billion. That tells you everything you need to know. Emma Hayes, once again, I don't know who the fuck Emma Hayes is. After establishing Chelsea as an elite side for women's Super League titles and 5 FA trophies, Hayes has made the highest paid women's coach in the world in U.S. national. I don't know who she is. Never heard of her. Athletes. Patrick Mahomes, well-deserving this list. Angel Reese. Is she one of the most influential people in sports today? I don't think so. I know she's doing very well as a dominant rebounder. Obviously, on social media, she's really building a very big base as well. And now she has her own podcast. And potentially, I think she will be more recognized for her podcast than she probably ever will be as a WNBA player. I could be wrong, but that's my impression right now, that she will be very successful as a social media person. But as far as basketball, I think a few more years of playing and with the fame, social media acumen, she will drift away from the sport, because I just don't think she's that hungry to be a great WNBA player as she is to be, a celebrity, right? But maybe down the road she will be this person that will be on this influential list because of her celebrity status, because of her social media. I mean, if Angel Reese is on this list, then a guy like Ryan Garcia inevitably has to be on this, because Ryan Garcia is far bigger on social media than Angel Reese is, right? His events have been way bigger. His Tank Davis event did well over 1 million pay-per-view buys. I mean, as far as his social media presence and his actual impact in the sport, he far outweighs Angel Reese. And that's just comparing two athletes that are very much social media type of people. Carlos Alcaraz, I've heard of him, but I'm not that familiar with who he is. So I don't know how of us, how much of an impact he has. A'ja Wilson, before this year, I think the majority of people didn't even know who she was, to be fair. She's a girl that played at South Carolina. Nobody watched her play for that Dawn Staley team. Now she played in the league. She's been one of the best players. People didn't really watch her that much, right? That's why she was always on social media making statements to get attention. Because outside of those statements, those tweets, people just weren't really giving her the props that she deserved. And I agree, she deserves it. Right now, she is easily the best women's basketball player in the world. Anthony Edwards, if he's not one of the best, most influential players in the NBA, he's definitely on his way. Max Verstappen, F1 driver, yes. I mean, F1 is global. The amount of people that love F1 is huge. So I can only imagine how many fans and how many people watch his events. Paul Skenes, I don't know who he is. I don't know how influential he is when literally I've never even heard of him. And I pay attention to the MLB, but I've never heard of him. Scotty Scheffler, yes. I know he's a great American golfer, the guy who's been picking up American golf since Tiger Woods. So I do know he is a big impact. Victor Wembanyama, yes, no doubt this 7'4", unbelievable number one draft pick is really becoming one of the most influential players in the NBA. Travis Hunter, I know the coach for Colorado, but I don't know this player, right? Outside of America, I can guarantee you nobody knows who Travis Hunter is. Connor McDavid, the best Canadian hockey player in the best country for hockey in the world. The next Wayne Gretzky and Mario Lemieux. Yes, he is super influential. He is the most dominant player in hockey today, and he's primed at 27 years old. If you watch hockey, you know who Connor McDavid is. Number one draft pick, and is more than lived up to expectations, has surpassed them, and made a Canadian team, Edmonton Oilers, relevant once again. Caitlin Clark, there's no doubt that Caitlin Clark is the most influential WNBA player or just person related to the WNBA at all. I mean, you just need to see the numbers, the shirts, and the impact she's had on the game. As I said, I don't really follow women's college basketball until Caitlin Clark started to show her dominance. And as far as WNBA, I watched it during its inception and the few years that followed, and then really lost interest completely. Followed a few players that came along that obviously caught my attention because of their star status. But once they went to the WNBA, they kind of became lost to the mass public, so that people sort of no longer really knew what they were doing because the WNBA was making such little impact in the sporting world. Caitlin Clark, on the other hand, is revolutionizing women's college basketball and women's pro basketball. She's doing to the WNBA what Michael Jordan did to the NBA. And as ridiculous as that sounds, that's the kind of impact she's having. And now some of the kickback is because of all this attention, some of the players are unhappy with the extra attention they're getting. But yet, with the good comes the bad. With more money and everything else that's going to come thanks to her highlighting the league, you're going to get more negative attention, just like NBA players do and everyone else in the sporting world. So WNBA players, you're a professional. You're going to have to start coping with the negativity just like every other fucking athlete in the world. Jude Bellingham. Jude Bellingham just joined the most dominant team in the world in Real Madrid. And last year was easily their best player in his first year as a midfielder. 21 years old, obviously did very well, helping to lead England very far this year in the Euros as well. He is a guy that right now has England feeling that inevitably they're going to be winning Euros and World Cups because of this kind of player. He kind of disappointed, but at the same time, that shows you the kind of expectations that are with him right now. Erling Haaland, who plays for Pep Guardiola, the most dominant footballer in the world today. The man is a bucket, right? Dominant. So far this year, he's had 2 hat tricks, and his last game was a 2-goal game, 1 goal away from his 3rd hat trick in 4 games. This is football, soccer. You're lucky if you score 3 goals in a game. Him scoring almost 3 fucking hat tricks in 4 games is fucking. This is what Messi used to do in his prime. This is what Ronaldo used to do in his prime. Those are the kind of numbers Erling Haaland is putting up right now for Man City, and why they are the most dominant team in football, outside, of course, Real Madrid, who's just got a super team. Super team. LSU Tigers talent, I don't know who's on LSU Tigers. How good could they be? It's a college football team that the majority of the world don't watch. Like, believe it or not, I know college football is huge in America, but outside of America, the rest of the world, nobody gives a fuck. Nobody knows who these players are. Katie Ledecky, I know she's a great Olympic swimmer, but outside of the Olympics, nobody knows who she is. Every 4 years, they pay attention, and the rest of the time in between, they don't fucking care. Juju Watkins. Juju Watkins is getting a ton of prep, hype, and obviously a lot of that is thanks to the girls right now who've been leading. But what people see from Juju is that Kobe Bryant influence. The fact that she might be that player to really bring swag into the WNBA. Caitlin Clark, obviously, is a superstar, potentially going to lead the league in scoring and assists. But when you get somebody like Juju Watkins, the smoothness, the way she plays the game, she's bringing a whole new athleticism that has never been seen in the W before. Like, she may be that player to follow Caitlin Clark and what's her face from UConn, who's going to obviously come out next year and is a great player as well. And then you bring Juju out there afterwards. She just might be that player that takes it to a whole new level, right? Because now not only are you going to grab the 60% white American population, but now you're really going to grab the Black American population with a player that just got swag, style. She is the female version of Kobe Bryant, and a super exciting player to watch. I hope that her USC team fucking does great next year. I would love to see them in the finals against UConn, right? Which would be fucking amazing. And not to kick out South Carolina and LSU. Both of those programs are very strong, and obviously they recruit very well. So they're going to have a bunch of great college ball players coming out of high school on those teams as well. But people are really, really excited to see what Juju does moving forward, especially with all the impact with Cheryl Miller. And if you're older like me, you grew up watching Cheryl Miller before the WNBA started. And people watched college basketball back when Cheryl Miller was playing, because that's how dominant USC was with the McGee sisters and Cheryl Miller, right? And then obviously them representing the U.S. team in the Olympics, dominating once again. And right, people were saying that in that family, she was the best player in that family, better than her brother, who obviously is a Hall of Famer, in Reggie Miller. So, now that she's really behind Juju, she's doing interviews all over the place, obviously bringing a lot more attention to USC. It's potentially really good for the W moving forward. Executives and deal makers. Michael Rubin, I know the name, but Mark Walters, obviously he made a big impact. He brought in 2 of the best Japanese pitchers in baseball. And right now, Shohei Ohtani, who should be on this list. Imagine some of the people that are on this list, but Shohei Ohtani, who was the first two-way player since Babe Ruth, right? And a player that obviously this year is potentially going to do something that no player in baseball history has done. 50 home runs, 50 stolen bases. That shit's ridiculous. And that's being done by a Japanese baseball player. So when we want to talk about most influential people in sports, if you don't have Shohei Ohtani on this list, it's fucking disgusting. Because people know him. People don't know who Mark Walters is outside of Los Angeles Dodgers fans, right? No one else knows who he is. They don't know who the guy is that brought Shohei Ohtani, but they know Shohei Ohtani. Oh, Natalie Portman. Angel City FE owners. Yeah, I don't know who they are outside of Natalie Portman. I don't know what fucking Angel City FC is, right? So I don't know how influential they are when literally nobody has ever fucking heard of them. And you're going to put them right up there with Florentino Perez. And already you've heard me talk about the super team, Real Madrid, that obviously, right, the great English player that we talked about earlier was a part of. This is the man who makes that come true, right? 35 trophies during his tenure, including his 15th Champions League title. 15 Champions League titles is fucking ridiculous. There's nobody even close to that. I think Liverpool has 5, if I'm not mistaken. 15, that shit is wacky, ridiculous, off the hook. Real Madrid has been producing super teams in football, soccer, fucking for as long as I can remember. And this is the guy who's the architect behind it. But then you're going to compare 3 women that nobody knows who the fuck they are except for Natalie Portman on a team that literally I don't think anyone in America even knows who the fuck they are. Is this a soccer team? I don't know. Tony Petiti, don't know who he is. Roger Goodell, yes, we all know Roger Goodell, but once again, a football commissioner. Outside of America, nobody's ever heard of Roger Goodell because nobody outside of America even knows what the NFL is. Sherry Ford Hamp, the owner of the Lions, who cares? Steve Ballmer, people know him more because of what he did for technology than what he's done as a Clipper owner. As a Clipper owner, he's done fucking very little but overspend and overpay for players that are old, injured, and underperforming. For a CEO of Microsoft, he became one of the richest men in the world. Kathy Egerbert, once again, Caitlin Clark is more influential for the WNBA than their commissioner is. Nobody knows who this woman is. Outside of this year, when we saw her shake hands with Caitlin Clark, nobody even knew that the commissioner for the WNBA was a woman. Right? Yasir Al-Rumayyan, Saudi Public Investment Fund governor. He is kind of like the guy right now that's doing boxing and taking over that. Turki Al-Sheikh, right? These are Saudi Arabians, guys that are bringing tons of money into sports, golf, soccer, boxing, and other events from around the world, trying to really change the impression the world has towards Saudi Arabia, right? And they got deep pockets and lots of money. But I don't think the majority of people know who he is, but there's no doubt financially he's made a huge impact on sports. House versus NCAA lawyers. I don't know how this is influential because nobody knows. TV deal negotiations, Rick Cordell and Jay Marine. Once again, who? Adam Silver, yes. Commissioner for the NBA, probably the most recognized person globally out of all the commissioners we've mentioned today. More than Goodell, more than anyone. Because basketball is global. People literally from around the world watch basketball. Influencers. Stephen A. Smith, once again, American-centric. Outside of America, the majority of people don't know who Stephen A. Smith is. Players' podcasts, athletes behind the mic. I will tell you right now, I've never seen Jalen Brunson, Josh Hart podcast. I didn't even know they had a podcast. Obviously, there's a lot of athletes that are involved in podcasts. I would say Jackson and what's his face, probably more so than this. Obviously, LeBron, when he was with his present day coach, more than that. So you can see that players, obviously, on podcasts get a lot of attention, specifically basketball players. Because as I said, basketball is global. So people from around the world, like me, I live in Asia, but yet I still watch Paul George and Steven Jackson's podcast. I never watched Jalen Brunson and Josh Hart. I don't mind watching it because I would think they would have great chemistry, being guys that went to college together. Obviously, they're like that. So now that I know, I'm probably going to watch it. But before today, I didn't even know they had a podcast. Kirk and Ben Herbstreit. Again, football. Only in America. Lewis Hamilton, the best F1 driver in the history of the sport. That's all you have to say. And there's been a long list of unbelievable F1 drivers, but Lewis Hamilton has taken it to a whole nother level, right? And really, you see him everywhere. Podcasts, YouTube, doing all kinds of things. So he is definitely influential. Virat Kohli, cricket player. Again, once again, Americans won't understand the significance of cricket worldwide, especially in some of the most populated countries in the world, right? Like India and Pakistan. The population from those two countries is huge. And then you have England, Australia, New Zealand, South Africa, right? All those countries together are huge cricket fans. Ridiculous. But obviously, India is a country that's the biggest country in the world, the biggest population, more than China right now. So obviously, having an Indian great batter like him representing India, obviously he has a huge impact, more so than probably 90% of the people we've listed on this list, because the population of India is so big. They're so fanatical about fucking cricket, which is really the only sport that India fucking really supports. To put that in context, obviously the NFL is huge in America, but the NFL, I mean, America produces, lots of other sports that people pay attention to. In India and Pakistan, it's this, and they almost go to war, literally, over fucking cricket. So the global impact of cricket is huge, huge. What does this say? For readers looking for a new glamour couple, comes Bollywood lead actress and Virat Kohli, who, in addition to being one of the world's top cricket players, also happens to be the most followed person on Instagram in the world's largest continent. There you that's what I tell you. He's the most followed person on Instagram. 271 million followers are more than any athlete except Messi and Ronaldo, and far beyond the 160 million of the most popular U.S. athletes, LeBron James. Kohli also has the requisite athlete investment profile. Yeah, as I said, you can't even understand the impact. Flo J. Johnson, come on, man. Let's be serious. She is not one of the most influential people in sports. She's probably not even going to play sports on a professional level because she's a better rapper than she is a basketball player. ESPN studio team, once again, American. The majority of the world doesn't watch ESPN. And then you have 3 girls, because this is what ESPN woke does, where you can't have men anymore talk about male sports like the Final Four. You're going to have women, and this is women's Final Four, sure. But as we mentioned earlier, outside of the last 2 years, nobody was watching women's Final Four basketball. Still, more people do brackets for men's Final Four. I can tell you I've never done a bracket for women's basketball. Never. Own 3 insiders, don't know who they are. Iona Mayer, a U.S. women's rugby player. A U.S. women's rugby player is one of the most influential people in sports. I've never heard of her. She was famous because she was on Love Island. She plays rugby, a sport that 99% of Americans don't fucking even know anything about. But she's influential. I don't understand how that makes any sense at all. But there you are. There is their list of the most influential people, top 50 most influential people in sports today. Yeah, you don't have Shohei Ohtani on the list, right? The 50 most influential figures in sports. What is influence? You know it when you feel it. Yet this list is primarily American-centric. Only a few examples of global impact, right? And the irony is, Americans will look at that and they won't give a shit about the Indian cricketer. They only know Messi because he's now playing in Miami. They don't know who Haaland is, or fucking Real Madrid's head guy, or Guardiola. Yet soccer is the biggest sport in the world, right? Cricket maybe now is getting close to it thanks to India's population surge. But some of these people on this list, let's see. It's not limited to those who rack up W's. The sports landscape is shaped by all kinds of power brokers, deal makers, culture titans, icons of leadership, and yes, incredibly high achievers. Some are athletes who push limits, redefine success, have an outsized impact outside the lines. Some are dominant coaches or Hall of Famers crafting legacies in real time. The sports conversation is also driven by influencers, social stars, style icons, taste makers, and opinion shapers, and business titans who know the negotiation table can be as competitive as any field or court. Power can shift, but right now in 2024, these are the most 50 most influential figures and forces in sports. Give me a fucking break. Literally. Literally. Like, it's almost fucking ridiculous to make a list like this and peddle it off as if it's actually something legitimate. Yet this list is primarily made for Americans because, as I said, the majority of people listed on this are American and representing sports that the majority of the world doesn't watch and don't care about. College fucking basketball, women's college basketball, NFL, swimming, and gymnastics. Literally, swimming and gymnastics are only watched every 4 fucking years. They don't even have the fastest man in America on this list. And yet he is by and far more influential than fucking Simone Biles or fucking the female swimmer or anybody else. Because literally when he says something, it resonates. When he criticized the whole fucking NBA as calling themselves world champions, that shit resonated around the world, right? And then he's went on to win a gold medal this year, coming off of obviously a lot of pressure put on by himself. So he lived up to expectations, right? As I said, Shohei Ohtani. This is the first guy since Babe fucking Ruth to be a hitter and a pitcher and do it on a high level, all-star level with both aspects. Hurt his shoulder, still playing, but now not pitching, only hitting. And literally is going to do something that's never been done in baseball history. Baseball history. You had fucking Bo Jackson. Bo Jackson knows. Yet Bo Jackson didn't have a 50-50 year. He didn't have 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases. Yet that dude is way faster than Shohei fucking Ohtani. And fucking jacked up like crazy. Right? We had Barry Bonds, who regularly did 40-40. Right? My favorite baseball player in history. Because that's the kind of athlete he was. Right? I wish we still had those CBS events when they get athletes from all sports and then make them do all these different things and give them points and see who is truly the best athlete in the world. Because I love that shit when it was being done. As a kid, to see these athletes, you see lots of people that are very specific and focused in certain areas. And then you see guys that are just great athletes like Herschel Walker, Bo Jackson, guys that were just fucking ridiculous, right? That's what Shohei Ohtani is. Ridiculous. You know, and I'm not even listing a ton of athletes that easily could be recognized as influential, right? David Beckham, who literally brought Messi to Miami, easily could be on this list. Easily. Right? And others. But, you know, let me know what you think in the comment section below. Let me know who you think should be on this list and who shouldn't. I mean, the fact that they got Don Staley, Angel fucking Reese, Flo J from LSU, Juju, but yet how many NBA players really are doing things that are unbelievable now? Like Luka, right? The Joker, Curry. But they're not as influential as those female players that are marginally recognized. Like, I don't know who watched the female U.S. team in the Olympics, but I guarantee you more people watched the U.S. men's team. Guarantee you. And one of the outstanding players in that game was Stephen Curry, right? Him and LeBron James hooking up, showing you that don't be surprised if those guys hook up together maybe next year, right? Because that's the kind of great chemistry they have. And you can see they really enjoy playing with one another. Now people, of course, comment on Caitlin Clark. Who do they compare it to? Curry. So obviously she's had a huge impact on female college basketball and WNBA. But he's been an icon in the NBA for fucking over a decade now. But he's not one of the most influential people in the sport. I mean, they didn't even list the coach for fucking Colorado, one of the best football players in the history of the sport, who's now went to college football and fucking taken the sport by storm. Like, being a Canadian living in Asia, I hear more about him than I do about any of the teams or any of the players. I don't know any players on his team except his son, but I know him. Yet he wasn't on this list. I'm sure a lot of you American people probably are more down to what's going on in the States. So feel free to leave your comment on who you think should be on this list. And for non-Americans, educate these people on who are some of the huge sports influencers in the world. The fact that a guy like Canelo Alvarez isn't on this list, it's ridiculous. You talk about influence. You think Angel Reese has more fucking influence than Canelo Alvarez? Are you fucking mental? Literally. Are you mental? And then you talk about Anthony Joshua, who's going to be fighting this weekend. You think Juju Watkins and these people have more fucking influence in sports today than Anthony fucking Joshua, who's literally selling out 100,000 stadium in London. 100,000 people are going to go watch this event this weekend. 100,000. How many people go watch Juju play in USC? 20,000? That would be huge. That's a great fucking turnout. More than that, I don't think so. 100,000, get fucked. But let's educate each other, because obviously we live around the world and we know which people are influential, focusing on the sports that we love and we follow. So feel free to leave your comments below. Thanks for watching. I appreciate it. Remember to like, subscribe, and share.